Hi friends, Cassie here. I'm talking to you today about this month's craft for adults. We're going to be making some fall leaf hanging decorations. You can see right here. We'll give you pretty much everything you need for this craft. We're going to give you the fabric leaves, crayons, fishing line. You'll need to go out and find yourself a stick. This one I think is probably about 1.5 feet long. Depending on how you want your finished product to look, you know, depends on, sorry, I got all tangled here. Depends on how long you want your stick to be. So I like my leaves to be spaced out a little, so that's why I want a little bigger. You might choose a smaller stick and kind of have them closer together. You'll also need some scissors, and you will need an iron for this craft. Your iron you want to set to the lowest setting possible. Typically that's cotton, but if you have a lower setting, that's even better. You don't want it really, really hot. Again, just make sure you have it on the lowest setting. Make sure you keep following along or keep watching to see how I made this fun little craft, and make sure you register to get your craft kit. Have a nice day. Thanks. So what you want to do when you get started is set up your station. So I like to put some scrap cardboard down and some newspaper just in case it gets a little, this can get a little messy. If you are doing it on an ironing board, then maybe throw down a towel, an old towel that you don't really care about, and then maybe even some newspaper as well, just a little extra safety measure. I also like to prep my crayon shavings, at least for each leaf before I do it. So you're gonna need a sharpener, like I said before. It's better if you have the one that has the big hole, so see how that's a bigger hole than this one. And you just, you know, make some crayon shavings, which is what I have over here. And then make sure your iron is on the lowest setting. You don't want to do it too hot because things can get messy, and a super hot iron would be dangerous. You want to avoid that. What I like to do is kind of iron out my leaf a little bit. The fabric can get a little, you know, bumpy, so I'm gonna just iron it out a little so it's nice and smooth. And then that also kind of makes the leaf a little warm, so I think it helps the crayon shavings set a little more. So I'm just gonna start placing my shavings. For our leaves, since they're not too big, you probably want to stick to 3-4 colors max. If you did too much, it's going to get muddled and isn't going to look great. And as you can see, I'm just putting the crayon shavings on top of the leaf. Let me try to get you a little closer so you can see it a little better. So I'm just putting it right on top of the leaf. I don't want to put too much because the wax, the colored wax, will seep out. And also, as I forgot to mention this before, I have a piece of parchment underneath the leaf, and I'm essentially going to make a little sandwich. So I start with a piece of parchment underneath the leaf, and then I'll place a piece of parchment above it before I iron it. Before you do that though, make sure you don't have any stray crayon shavings laying around outside of the parchment, and you also don't want it too far close to the edge, because when it melts, it's going to, you know, melt and then expand. So I just placed my parchment over. Now I'm going to take my iron and I'm just going to press it down, and you can see it's already melting some. Press down a little bit more. You can always kind of do that a little, but keep an eye on it. Do a couple seconds at a time because it already, you know, melted fully. Once you lift it up, you can see it's fully melted on there. Sometimes you might have a couple wax chunks if you piled it up too much. If that happens, you can always just put the parchment back on and press it down a couple more seconds. So what you want to do is kind of let it dry for maybe 5 or 10 seconds. It's not super warm to the touch because we're using a very low setting. And then you carefully peel it off. And then I just kind of like to let it sit and dry on my newspaper. And then you move on to your next leaf, and you do that for all 6 leaves. So there we go. And it's actually already fine to touch. It's not wet anymore. So once you have that happen, I'm gonna make sure I turn my iron off for safety. And your leaf is okay to touch, and it's not, you know, not burning you. Again, if it's a low setting, it won't burn you. We want to avoid that. As you can see with our fabric, there's some extra little edges that are kind of rough. That's because this is a very thin fabric, so it starts to pull at the edges. But once the wax is on here, you know, it's stiff. So then I like to go through and, you know, trim the edges of where that extra strings are. So I'm just gonna do that. And once I finish that, I'm gonna show you how to poke a hole in it. Okay, so I've trimmed all my edges and I have a pretty smooth surface now. So what I'm gonna do is I just used an open paper clip. If you have a safety pin, it'll obviously be much easier. And this might be a part that an adult can do, so you just don't poke yourself. But I like to kind of get to, not too close to the edge, but probably about a little, you know, a centimeter or 2 in. And if you're using a safety pin, you kind of just put it between 2 fingers, like so. And you want to carefully just push through the fabric, and there you go, it pokes through. And it's hard to see on camera. Let me find my little hole so I can show you. Oh, where did it go? There it is. So, but see, I do have a little hole in there. And with that hole, I'm going to take my fishing line. And there you go, you can see that. And I'm just gonna poke it through the hole. And since fishing line is stiff, it is pretty easy to get through that hole. And I'm gonna double knot it on this side, right over here. So let me do that real quick. These leaves are very light, so you don't have to worry about it, you know, pulling through, but you do want to make sure you double knot it, because if you do a single knot, it can kind of fall through that hole. But the double knot is plenty. I've done different variations on this craft before, and I've never had any of them pull through. I mean, as long as you're not too rough with it. So I'm just going to trim a little bit of the edge. And now I have it where it can hang from the line. And I'm going to zoom out in a minute and show you how I tie it to my stick. So here's my stick, and I've already placed my other leaves on here. So once you have your leaf, you kind of want to decide where you're going to place it. So I was trying to do a little V look. So this one I want to be slightly higher than the last one. That's just, you know, my preference. So here's what it looks like with all 6. And then I'm going to just, again, double knot it up top. And fishing line is a little slippery, but if you kind of just take your time, you'll get it there. So there's my first knot. And let me just loop it around and get my second one. Oh, and see how I didn't do that too high? I can always go back in and fix it. I just kind of looped it around a little. I'm gonna loop it around again. So it's a little higher, and then I'm just gonna knot it with those loops. You can always kind of take it out, but I find that once you've knotted fishing line, it is a little more difficult to take out those knots. So there we go. Let me untangle these. They do get tangled easily, so just whenever they do get tangled up on you, just take your time undoing them. Because again, you don't want to pull the leaves from the fishing line. All right, I'm going to trim the excess. And there we go. There is our completed project. Thanks for watching, and I hope you have fun making this. Bye.